It's Kate.
And Oliver Hudson. Host of the new podcast, Sibling Revelry. That's right.
We started this show because, you know what? No one talks about siblings and that dynamic.
The siblings, they know each other better than anybody.
Yes.
You know.
Listen to Sibling Revelry on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hi, I'm Frances Fry.
And I'm Ann Morris.
And we are the hosts of a new TED podcast called Fixable.
We've helped leaders at some of the world's most competitive companies solve all kinds of problems.
On our show, we'll pull back the curtain and give you the type of honest, unfiltered advice we usually reserve for top executives. Give us a call and we'll help you solve the problems you're stuck on. Listen to Fixable on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Episode 273, Why You Keep Self-Sabotaging Your Budget and How to Stop.
Welcome to the Frugal Friends podcast, where you'll learn to save money, embrace simplicity, and live a richer life. Here are your hosts, Jen and Jill.
Welcome to the Frugal Friends podcast. My name is Jen.
My name is Jill.
And today we are talking about budgeting and something that is near and dear to my heart, self-sabotaging your budget. Because when I started budgeting, that's all I did was self-sabotage my perfect, quote unquote, perfect budget.
Yeah, we love to do it. Like the thing we don't want to do, we do. And then we keep doing it and we wonder why. And then it can turn into a really awful cycle where we're down on ourselves and we think we're the worst and we're never going to be capable. And that's not true.
Yeah.
But there is something too in any of our behaviors, in any area of our life that we want to see improvement. Somehow things can interrupt, or we can interrupt ourselves. And we don't have all the answers for you, but we're going to take a little bit of a look at why does this happen? Because you're not alone. This does happen for all of us. And what are some things that we can consider that are going to help us stay on the track of what we've identified is most helpful for our finances?
Yeah. And so we're going to take the perspective of looking at some of the psychology behind it, looking at some of the areas you should probably be giving yourself grace that you might not, and some of the mistakes that can come from living in this self-sabotage and kind of internalizing it. So that's what we're talking about today. But first, this episode is brought to you by the Frugal Friends Club.
Woo-woo.
So you know about our private membership. So to celebrate the new year, new you hype, we're going to offer a sale on Frugal Friends Club. Because why not? I mean, it's here. Why not? We know motivation is high in January and falls off around February, March. But we want you to stay motivated past the hype. We want you to stay motivated to your financial goals all year long. And that is the purpose of Frugal Friends Club. It's a community specifically for our listeners paying off debt. And it's filled with courses, challenges, expert interviews, and community that will help you pay off debt faster. Everything we put in there is meant to help you pay off debt faster. And if you have other financial goals, it also, as a byproduct, helps with those. But that's kind of our mindset when we put something in there. And then it'll also help you figure out what to do after. So remember when I finished paying off my debt, I was very clueless on what to do, like specifically what to do after. So we have an amazing community in there with monthly accountability groups. Several members even go through our book club selections. It's so lovely. So if this sounds like something that could help you stay on track this year, head to frugalfriendspodcast.com/club to see everything in there and get in on the sale that we're running through January 10th.
See you in there.
Woo woo. So if budgeting is really something that you are focusing on right now, we definitely have resources for you in the Frugal Friends Club. But we also have a ton of other free resources via the podcast. So a few episodes you might want to queue up for after this are episode 237, which is Kakibo, the Japanese art of mindful budgeting. And then episode 175, psychological tricks for sticking to a budget. Those are probably my two favorite budgeting episodes. So 237 and 175, really good ones to queue up for after this. But let's get into talking about self-sabotage. Jill, where are we heading? Where are we going?
So this first article comes from The Motley Fool and titled 6 Ways to Stop Sabotaging Your Finances, although they actually go into 6 ways that you are sabotaging your finances, or we are sabotaging. I'll say we, because I'm not trying to point fingers here. I'm a part of this. It's, I fall victim to the holiday spending. So it's going through what are some of the things that kind of interrupt our best laid plans, but then what can we replace it with? So we'll go through all 6. The first thing that we can do to sabotage our financial goals and best laid plans is not having best laid plans. You know it. It's called not budgeting. And they reference a Debt.com survey that showed that 33% of Americans do not budget their money, although 93% believe that everyone should. So you've got a bit of a gap there. And honestly, I would imagine it's higher than that. Although 33%, that's a lot of people. And then even when we do set a budget, whether or not we're looking at it, paying attention to it, following it is a whole other ballgame. We also describe budgeting as a spending plan. So if that's a more approachable term for making a plan for your money, then sure, call it whatever you want to call it. But we're not going to do very well if we don't actually know what we're doing. If we've not assigned a task for our money or know how much is coming in or going out. So instead of not budgeting, we could try creating a spending plan, creating a budget, and viewing it as a tool in order to meet our goals. Again, Jen mentioned a few different episodes that you could queue up if this is your particular area of sabotage to your finances, is just like not doing it, not having the motivation, feeling like it's going to be strict and stringent, all of these things that kind of rail against this thing that we know we should be doing. Look at some different alternatives to maybe what you have in mind as what a budget looks like. It does not have to be a strict spreadsheet that details things down to the penny. There is so much freedom and flexibility in this, but having some sort of plan is going to help us not sabotage.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a restrictive plan. You know that we love to make a guilt-free, values-based budget. I think, so this leads into number 2. The second self-sabotage is building an impossible budget. I know this was my problem because I looked at numbers on a screen and I wrote them down and I said, this is the perfect budget. This is what I should be spending on this is what I have to spend on this. And so this is what I should have left over. And this was a budget for an ideal person, not a budget for me, not for where I was at. And so doing that and failing at it month after month led me to stop budgeting. And so I was trying to create these impossible budgets, which just led me to not budget at all. And so I think those two can go hand in hand more than we think. And the thing to do instead is to create a flexible budget, we see them so like we hear zero-based budget and 50, 30, 20 budget, and we think we have to stick to these things, these models that other people have made, when really you just want to have a plan for your spending. And life always finds a way to interrupt your best laid plans. And so finding ways to navigate that. We had I forget which challenge it was that we did in the membership, but I think it was for goals that we had people identify okay, there are going to be roadblocks for you creating these habits to get to these goals. Think of them now and think of ways you can go around them. Like just anticipate them. Think of them now. If you go back and look at your last 90 days of transactions and look at the ones that you wish you hadn't made, that's a roadblock. Look at that and figure out what was something that I could have said or done differently so that I could have avoided spending this money that I really didn't want to spend. So just do that in advance.
Yeah. And this next one is kind of connected to that idea of what you're saying, Jen. Another area that we can sabotage ourselves is not saying no. It's kind of like a double negative, but the inability to say no, usually, to both ourselves and others. I can really identify with this one, particularly when it comes to something that seems really fun. Like if you throw a fun activity at me, it is very hard to say no to myself or others. And I'm not advocating for deprivation here, but I think this is an area that can really truly sabotage what we've said we wanted to do. And it doesn't have to. I have tried to challenge myself to find a way to be able to say yes to whatever is exciting me, but no to the interruption of financial goals that it might mean. So for instance, there have been many times when it's not difficult to try and get me to go out to eat. Cooking sometimes feels overwhelming, and I like going out to eat, but some weeks it's not in the meal plan. It's not in the spending plan. It's just not there. But there are many times where Eric is very successful and just, hey, let's go hit up a happy hour. Let's go, I got to run to Lowe's. But it, of course, ends up taking 2 or 3 hours instead of the 15 minutes he thought. And now I'm hungry. And so, yes, it's easy for me to say, yes, let's go out to eat. And I'm not saying that this happens perfectly every time. Sometimes I just do. I give in and I sabotage in some small ways the thing that I said that I wouldn't do. But I have found in some conditions this happy medium where I'm able to kind of create that pause of, ooh, I'm excited about that. I don't have to deprive myself of the entire thing, but what is a good negotiation here? What's a good compromise? And so there have been times where, okay, yes, I would love to go out, but let's eat the dinner that I've prepared and just go have a drink out, or let's eat here and let's just get out of the house. Let's go on a scooter ride. Let's go on a walk. Let's go do whatever it is. It doesn't have to be that I don't do something or I don't have fun, but it doesn't have to mean that I'm spending a ton of money that I didn't plan or want to spend. And that's also connected to what we talk about regularly of values-based spending. And so the kind of what to do instead here, in that when we recognize that inability to say no to ourselves, I think the biggest piece, and they reference this in the article, is creating a pause. Just an opportunity to reflect and process. Doesn't have to be very long. We're not talking about getting our journal out and sitting with quiet music for an hour, but thinking, oh, okay, what's happening here? What is it that is causing me to want to spend this money? Is it aligned with my values? Is it actually something I need or want or has been on my radar or priority list for a while? Or is it not? Is it totally peripheral? I'm going to be really bummed in a week when I look back at this expenditure that this happened. And is there an alternative? Is there some way that I can engage in this while not maybe spending as much or spending at all and still get the thing that the fun piece, the connection with others, you name it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's this hard balance between saying no and not depriving yourself, right? We love no spend challenges, which at their core really seem to be depriving, because we're saying actually don't spend money on anything, whether you value it or not, just for a month. But it's in order to get clarity on really the priorities of what you value. If you have an income where you can afford everything you value, that is fantastic. That is the goal, is to create that. Mm-hmm. But not all of us are there yet. And so on the way there, while you are achieving other financial goals, there are always going to be some values and things you love that lose out to higher value things and higher value goals. And I think that's where we say we want to say yes as much as possible, as long as it's within the parameters of that plan.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we have to prioritize that. What else in life can we say yes to every single thing and it actually go well or be beneficial? So there will have to be, even in the midst of identifying our values, prioritizing what am I going to tackle first? What's going to take precedent here?
Yeah. And even in the cases where you can afford everything, eventually everything then becomes less meaningful. I know I was going to say meaningless, but like less meaningful. When you are forced to choose, the thing that you choose automatically becomes more special. And so that's not like a way that we kind of want to like live our lives, but it can be some solace to know that when you choose everything, like when you're in that spending mode where you're just spending on everything, then nothing is really meaningful. But when you're making these intentional choices, the things you say yes to are more special. Maybe that's somehow encouraging. Probably not in the moment, but just sit with it. We'll see. Number 4 is caring what other people think.
Wow.
This is, I feel personally like I could have written this, because one of the things that kept me spending was not so much caring what people think, but just caring about being there. FOMO, honestly, it was like fear of missing out. It wasn't even necessarily what they thought of me, but it did depend. I mean, it was kind of, I didn't want other people having fun experiences and then hear about it later. So it was still like other people oriented. So it can be, I think this can go to either way. And it's why finding your values, and maybe we should have switched up this week and next week or next episode. The next one's about values. Whoops. But it's really important to go on the difficult journey of figuring out who you are and what you want and what you value, so that you can know, is this what I want, or am I being influenced by somebody else? Or am I like kind of quasi trying to impress this person or have the same experience as them, make sure they don't experience something fun that I didn't, so that you can get to the point where you stop caring earlier in life.
I'm there. I hit that. I'm a little concerned for what the rest of life is going to look like, because I don't think you're supposed to like truly stop caring until you're like in your 60s, but it's happened in my 30s. So stay tuned.
There's always more room to care less.
That's true.
I believe that. Okay. I truly believe that.
Yeah. And there's a reason that there's a term for this type of scenario of keeping up with the Joneses. But the reality is that it always will fall flat. If that's the aim, it will never be achieved. Or when that target is hit, if that's the target, it will quickly shift to a new target. And there is very little actual personal fulfillment in that. Again, we all can fall into this or sabotage ourselves in this way and want things that other people have or want to be perceived in a certain way. But I think challenging ourselves to have a deeper aim in the way that we live our life, which connects to how we spend our money, is ultimately what's going to be most fulfilling. We need to have deeper, more anchored aims than just what is the person next to me doing.
Yeah.
So the next one in the way that we can sabotage ourselves is by making spending easy. Really just not having many boundaries or parameters or barriers to spending, and I'm talking primarily impulse spending, because we all spend money and no part of us is advocating for never spending and never buying things and never doing fun stuff. But when we don't have many barriers in place or tethers on our ability to spend, again, it lowers the barrier to entry for some of those impulse purchases. And this can happen to any one of us. And the article kind of references this example. This might not be for everyone, but helpful to kind of understand when we have our debit cards or credit cards already entered into whatever website, whether it's Amazon or a place that we regularly schedule or shop at online. It already has that information. We don't have to go find our credit cards or type it all in again. It's just, put it in the shopping cart and one click buy and done. That can make it really easy for us to late night when all of our decision-making fatigue has caught up with us and our guards are down and we're just scrolling and buying and scrolling and buying. And so if that's you, one of the things that can be done is, first of all, not make it so easy to get to those sites on your phone. So if that's like a late night thing that's happening, instead, put a block on those. Maybe don't have those apps downloaded on your phone, or find some way to interrupt your habit of picking up your phone after 10 p.m. and scrolling those sites, and all of these habits are going to need to be replaced with something. It's not a matter of just cutting it out. It's what am I going to do instead? And so could there be a game that you play on your phone instead of shopping? Could there be a book that you read instead of shopping? Find other things that are going to keep you entertained rather than just the shopping piece. They also reference in this article paying cash. That for me is not the answer. It could be for you. So I'm mentioning it because for some people, it feels like a bigger barrier to have to spend cash on something. They actually feel it coming out of their wallets in that way. For me, when I spend cash, I just feel like, oh, there's no log of this. It's fair game. Like, spend it however you want to, because you're never going to see it again. So whatever it is for you, identifying how have you potentially made spending easy and in what ways can you create barriers? I know we've talked about, even with emails, the Unroll Me site that you can sign up for, and it kind of compiles all of the different email lists that you're on. And so you're not consistently being bombarded with all these ads and marketing techniques that sometimes you might impulse spend on. So there's all sorts of technology and things that we can implement ourselves to interrupt this kind of thoughtless, mindless impulse purchasing.
Yeah. No spending after 9. Just try that rule. Try that rule on for size. Once 9 p.m. hits, we're not buying anything. And then the last one on this list that we will just go through briefly, because why do we really have to reiterate this, is your self-sabotage, number 6, failing to imagine the future. Because you will, on average, live till 80-something. And on average, you will only work until 63. So the average person, and I know like mom said you're special, but like she was probably average too. And you're probably all average, you know? So like just plan to live into your 80s. Plan to retire in your 60s.
Average. No one's pointing fingers. We are all
I'm
average.
looking at myself, like I can see myself in the video camera as I say this, and I'm looking at myself and saying, you're average, Jen. So stop thinking you're going to die in your 50s. And so just save, you need to, and the point of that is that you need to be putting savings for retirement into your plan. If you are old enough to be able to queue up this podcast and listen to it with the attention span to listen all the way through, then you are old enough to invest for retirement. And that's even, absolutely you are. Even if you're not 18 yet, there's still ways that you can start doing that. So yeah, it is never too early. You save money on
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry, and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power. So how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing. And of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/strategic. That's oracle.com/strategic. oracle.com/strategic.
Discover the heartwarming and hilarious world of sibling connections on Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson.
You might be asking yourself, what is sibling revelry?
Yeah, well, we just made it up.
They'll have some laughs and maybe inspire some people along the way with universal tales of what it's like to grow up with brothers and sisters.
We're full-blood siblings, the only full-blood sibling.
In our family. Well, not in the world. I mean...
No, in the whole world. That's just it. Like, no one...
Dive into family tales and explore the human mind with guests like Joel and Benji Madden.
And it's fun because we've decided to open it up, to really like all kinds of different siblings. And it's going to be an awesome season.
It's more than a podcast. It's a celebration of the ties that bind us. Listen to Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
On retirement, the earlier you start. So if you're really looking for ways to save money from this podcast, here's a good one. Start investing earlier.
Yeah. And now for the next article.
So our next one is from Well and Good, and it's 5 sneaky ways your mind sabotages your spending. And these are really short, so we'll go through them quickly because it's more of a less like actionable steps and more of like, here's some places to give yourself grace, or here's some places you might want to dig into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And my disclaimer is, first of all, the word sneaky in this title, I have to disagree with. Like, none of these are that sneaky, and you'll kind of see why as we go through them. But also, the purpose of, our intention in talking about this article is to continue to challenge us towards curiosity about self, which can lead to greater understanding of self, which can lead to creating systems, habits, mindsets around the things that we know to be true about who we are, and create an individualized plan that is aimed at well-being and freedom and helps us in our finances. So a lot of this article, at least when I read it, can come across as just like, oh, and here's a problem, and here's a problem, and here's a problem.
The titles are abrasive. I will say that. I felt offended.
Right. Without much way of like, okay, but what do we do about this?
Yeah.
And so that's where we, your fellow frugal friends, will kind of fill in the blanks. But I think some of these are worth noting because we are whole people, and a lot of these mental, emotional, relational things that are identified in this article are accurate. While coming across abrasive, it's worth identifying them so that you could take a deeper dive on the things that feel relevant for you and how understanding that more might help you in your financial decisions.
Yeah. So I'm not even going to read the ones that the titles that they wrote. I'm just going to read the ones that Jill rewrote. So number 1 is your attachment style impacts your relationship with money. And I was unfamiliar with attachment styles, but apparently they are how you relate to others. So secure, avoidant, anxious, disorganized. If you recognize one of those or multiples in your relationship with others, those have a direct effect on how you relate to money. So this doctor says each attachment style may respond from that desire to avoid discomfort. And I feel like a lot, I mean, even if you don't have what this article calls an insecure attachment style. That's offensive. I'm very secure. I'm very secure in my negative attachment styles. Thank you. I really, some of our spending is to avoid discomfort, I think. And so I found that like very eye-opening, that if you can identify something in your relationships, then it's very likely that it's going to have some impact in your money.
So to fill in the blanks a little bit more, attachment styles, that it is research done by psychiatrist and psychoanalyst John Bowlby, who identified various attachment styles in children to their parents or caregivers. So the 4 different attachment styles that you listed, anxious, avoidant, disorganized, secure, those are the 4 attachment styles identified by Bowlby that happens and occurs as children. And it is particularly related to the way that we've attached to our parent or caregiver. And it has to do with how they responded to us in childhood and what that instilled in us and our understanding of relationships. And so these different attachment styles then, most research points to the fact that you're really not going to change an attachment style. Whatever was instilled in you as a child is the attachment style that you're living with. That, again, I don't want to not have room for hope here, or that we can't learn more about ourselves or operate aimed at health within those attachment styles. But whatever is instilled in us as far as attachment to our parent or caregiver can then bear weight and impact on our relationships and behaviors into adulthood. So this isn't like, I don't want to say, zero focus in on attachment style and make all of your financial decisions around that, or any other aspect of life. But if this sounds curious to you of, I wonder what my attachment style is, what was learned for me in response to my parent or caregiver, and how does that impact my relationships? Certainly, this is the curiosity with self, the understanding of ourselves, that will help us in the way that we relate. And of course, it bears impact on our behaviors. The article doesn't go into much depth about what that's going to mean. And I would say understanding our attachment style will first and foremost help us in relationships and our relationship with ourselves. But then peripheral impact can be our relationship with money and the decisions and behaviors that occur in us as a result of that. So just a quick side note on attachment styles.
Thank you for giving that explanation, because that's super fascinating. I had never heard of this before.
My clinical licensure is surfacing here in this.
I know. That's why we pay you the big bucks, is because you got those letters.
Okay. Number 2, this one is so true. We've talked about this a lot, is our emotions. And that includes being dysregulated, can impact our money decisions. I don't love how the article only focuses on dysregulated emotions. I think we move in and out of being regulated and dysregulated, and both can bear weight and do bear weight on the money decisions that we make. We don't only make poor money decisions when we're dysregulated. We can also make poor money decisions when we're regulated. But recognizing what happens for us when we are in either state, whether feeling really kind of lacking control in our emotions, or feeling really down or sad, or feeling really elated and happy and on top of the world. All of these things can impact what we choose to do with our money. We've talked about this in depth, so I'm not going to say much more than that, other than it's worth looking at, and maybe even keeping a journal, keeping a log, recognizing, when I'm feeling this way, here's what I'm likely to do. Is that beneficial for me? Great. Let's keep doing that. Is it not? What could I replace that with?
Absolutely. Number 3 is neurodivergences that need to be considered. So that's an umbrella term for all variations, including ADHD, autism, Asperger's, dyslexia, epilepsy, hyperlexia, OCD, Tourette. So a lot. All right. And there are a lot more people that have neurodivergences, whether even slightly, that do impact how you budget, and you don't even realize it. And so I think that's one of the important parts of really figuring out yourself and doing kind of that deep work, so that if you have kind of tendencies towards one of these, even if it's undiagnosed, but maybe you just see something, and I'm mostly talking about ADHD. I think there's a lot more people that have that just because of the, environmental, environmental situation is just so ripe for creating that. I think a lot of people kind of can tend towards that. And so learning from that and giving yourself grace in the way you budget. It doesn't mean you can't budget. It doesn't mean you are incapable of budgeting. It means you should budget differently. And a lot of that means a little bit more flexibility in your budget. And I think all of us need more flexibility in our budget, but just definitely having more grace for yourself if you do tend towards one of these divergences.
Yeah, whether neurodivergent or neurotypical, it's important to understand our personal makeup and the way that we make decisions, the way we view the world around us, how that impacts our behaviors. It's important for all of us. And I think giving the permission to create, particularly when we're talking about finances, a system that includes and recognizes those aspects of ourselves, not trying a one size fits all, because one size does not fit all. I think t-shirt companies are recognizing that now.
Amen.
And so whatever you know about yourself, not putting that aside and trying to make a round peg fit into a square hole, but incorporating that. How does my knowledge about whatever it is that I know about myself, whether it's one of the neurodivergences that Jen listed or something else, or not even under that category, whatever, we're all humans. And so what does that inform me about how I can be kind to myself in my approach to finances, while also not ignoring it, right? Not going to either extreme of, oh, well, because of this, I'm not capable at all, or because of this, you name it. It could go in either direction, but utilizing this knowledge and information to inform and create systems that are kind to you around finances. And next, number 4 is our own manipulation of ourselves is one of the things that can lead to sabotage of money. I don't love this terminology. Like, I don't love the term manipulation. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but it sounds quite negative that we're like manipulating ourselves.
I don't think a lot of it is on purpose or is like maniacal or negative.
Yeah. But I think maybe a better way to define this would be what's realistic or not realistic. In what ways are we maybe thinking something is going to happen? This might be like fantastical thinking versus what's reality, or creating something. I know that we mentioned in that first article, creating something that's completely unrealistic, not something that's possible for us or desired even. This can be, they give some examples of like, oh, I'll do that later, or I'll totally budget when XYZ happens. And I don't think that's manipulation. That might be just like thinking something's going to be true that isn't true. Maybe having a fantastical view of ourselves and what we're going to do or what we're capable of, and not actually looking at, well, what are my patterns of behaviors and what could I reasonably expect to get done in the next week? Or is it true that tomorrow I'll do the budget? Or is it better that I'll do it right now, carve out space as I'm thinking about it? So just kind of I guess that there's a possibility that we kind of like trick ourselves, but I think it's just a matter of looking at what's reasonable, what's realistic, and not continuing to find ourselves in this cycle of telling ourselves something's going to happen when it's not going to happen. And maybe even we know full well it's not going to happen. So just taking a little bit more of a realistic approach with ourselves.
Yeah, it's like selective rationalization. It's you're saying it's definitely, I'm going to do this tomorrow. I'll just fall asleep tonight. I'll track today's and tomorrow's transactions tomorrow. That's what it sounds like. But I think when it comes to the first sentence was like, it's important to be aware when someone else is attempting to manipulate you. And I know this is talking about self, but I think a lot of our manipulation is like super well-intentioned. Honestly, most manipulation is like just the people around us wanting what they think is best for us. And we can take some of that on and internalize it and kind of create that in ourselves and want what other people think is best for us, when really we should be doing a little more realistic rationalization on, okay, what is best for me? So just a little addition to that. And then the last one is you're still embracing learned behaviors that no longer serve you. This was the only one that I thought was not abrasive. So this kind of, I guess ties a little bit into the attachment styles, but is focused on things that you can change. So they're saying our upbringing around finances and money greatly affects our spending habits in the future. For example, if you were raised by people who had insecure attachment styles, you likely picked up on their spending habits. For me, it was my mom always every weekend we went to the mall. Like shopping was a hobby. It was an activity. And so that was the way we bonded. And if we wanted to bond, we went to the mall. And that, when I became an adult, and I think about this every Black Friday too, because my favorite part of Thanksgiving was not the meal. It was planning the Black Friday shopping route and acquisition of sale items. That was the best part for me. And nobody is surprised if you know me. And that habit, that behavior no longer serves me in adulthood. And it was a kind of a little difficult to let go of. It took my job actually requiring me to work every Black Friday for 5 years. That broke me of it. So thank you, Greg. Thank you, Greg. So yeah, like there are these things, and you can accept that, like when I was younger, Black Friday, strategic shopping was very fun and it served me in that way. And it no longer serves me today. And so I can be happy about what I did and when I did it and still change and create different behaviors today without feeling guilty about the past and without losing anything in the present or future.
Yeah. I mean, just recognizing cycles and patterns of behavior and where to interrupt them. Sometimes it can help us to even draw it out, like literally draw out a circle and identify like, where does it start? What happens next? What happens next? What happens next? What's the end? How does it then get back into the cycle again? And then once we have that written out around the circle, identifying where can this be interrupted? At what point do I want to interrupt it? And with what can I interrupt it? And just begin practicing changing and shifting some of those learned behaviors.
Yeah. You know how I love to interrupt you when you are just on this like rampage of wisdom?
With something that doesn't need to be shifted or changed.
The Bill of the Week.
Right. It's time for the best minute of your entire week. Maybe a baby was born and his name is William. Maybe you paid off your mortgage. Maybe your car died and you're happy to not have to pay that bill anymore. Duck bills, Buffalo Bills, Bill Clinton. This is the Bill of the Week.
This is Tim from Florida, and a few months ago, I applied to have my PMI removed. So my house had gained quite a bit of equity in the last housing bump. So this past month was the first month that I didn't have to pay PMI on a fairly new mortgage. And so that's $120 a month. But I'm going to continue to just keep paying it against the principal. So $120 additional onto the principal over the life of the loan will be another $74,000. So I'm pretty happy about that. Thanks.
Yes, Tim from Florida. This is amazing. Well done.
Yes.
I mean, that PMI, that's one of those things that once it's rolled into your mortgage, many people can forget about. But the fact that you remembered it and you were able to get rid of it, it sounds like before when you thought you could, because the value of your home increased, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. So that's something, there's just a tip for all of us.
Hashtag housing in Florida.
To be
everywhere, really.
Yeah, to take a look at. But then how wise of you to keep paying what you were used to paying towards your mortgage and applying that, what you were paying to PMI, to the principal instead, and the difference that's going to make for you in the long run. That's just... You've just hacked some housing right there, Tim from Florida. Well done.
Yeah. I love this because PMI, especially right now when it's not advantageous to refinance, but so many housing values have gone up to where so many people can get PMI off. And you can make the decision. I can either stop, buying lattes and save $120 a month, or I can just look at this one simple thing that I didn't even know existed or that I could remove and just take it off, and I can buy all my lattes and save the same amount and not think about it. It's so easy. And I will say that sometimes you will have to pay for an appraisal to do that if you're not refinancing. Honestly, it's a lot cheaper. It's like $500 versus closing costs for refinancing, but you would make that out ideally if the interest rates weren't crazy. So if you think your mortgage has gone up, check Zillow and then take a little bit off of that because Zillow is very generous. See if you have that 20% equity. I think they might require maybe just a smidge over. They'll automatically take it off, I think, at 25% of the loan paid off, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to pay off 20% of the loan to get PMI removed. You have to have that 20% of equity. So if your house price has gone up, check it. You may be able to get PMI off and have those lattes.
Love that. If you are listening and you're similar to Tim from Florida, just hacking housing and getting rid of PMI and paying down principal, or you're like Jen, who is just concerned about getting her lattes and no one yelling at her.
Thank you.
Whatever your bill is, send it to us. Really, truly, we've ripped through a lot of our bills now and we need more. So frugalfriendspodcast.com/bill. Leave us your bill. You won't be waiting in the wings for 6 months anymore.
Yeah, this is not something we thought about when we went to 2 episodes a week. This was an oversight, and we need your help. We need your bills.
We do need your bills. And now it's time for
the lightning round.
Discover the heartwarming and hilarious world of sibling connections on Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson.
You might be asking yourself, what is sibling revelry?
Yeah, well, we just made it up.
They'll have some laughs and maybe inspire some people along the way with universal tales of what it's like to grow up with brothers and sisters.
We're full-blood siblings, the only full-blood sibling.
In our family. Well, not in the world. I mean...
No, in the whole world. That's just it. Like, no one...
Dive into family tales and explore the human mind with guests like Joel and Benji Madden.
And it's fun because we've decided to open it up, to really all kinds of different siblings. And it's going to be an awesome season.
It's more than a podcast. It's a celebration of the ties that bind us. Listen to Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
From the studio who brought you the #1 podcast, The Piketon Massacre, this is Murder 101.
A group of high school students started a project to research a string of unsolved murders.
Those murders happened in the mid-1980s.
He's out there doing stuff. He just didn't stop.
Everything that the students predicted through their profile turned out to be accurate.
Redhead killer profile. Male, Caucasian, 5'9" to 6'2", 180 to 270 pounds. Unstable home, absent father and a domineering mother. Right-handed, IQ above 100, most likely heterosexual.
There is no profile of this killer except for the ones the students created.
Just because some of these women no longer have people to speak for them does not mean that they deserve to not be spoken for.
What if this guy's still alive? Like, what if he comes after us?
I said, are you going to kill me? And he said, yes.
Listen to Murder 101 on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, so today in the vulnerability lightning, pew, pew. How do you divert yourself away from self-sabotaging behaviors? Let's give the people some real world actionable tips.
Let's give them something to talk about.
Let's give them something to do.
Okay.
And yours is good, Jill.
This one took a lot of thought for me. I really had to think through like what could be my self-sabotaging. And I did mention this already, but this is true for me.
Bears repeating.
Yeah, I do pause. I have kind of formed so much of a habit of this that I don't truly hardly notice it anymore. But if I think about my behaviors, I pause when it comes to spending. Whether I'm at home and shopping online or out in a store, I do regularly check in with myself to determine how I'm feeling about making the purchases, whether I feel like it's a good decision, if it's actually something that is on the list or is truly going to solve a problem, or if it's in the spending plan. And that pause, many times that check-in is, yep, good to go. Keep moving forward. But there are plenty of times too where that pause makes me realize, yeah, I'm feeling uneasy about this. I'm feeling kind of uncertain about springing for this item that wasn't on the list. It kind of just caught my eye. I don't actually think I'm going to be thrilled that I bought this when I get home or when it arrives at my doorstep. And okay, let's take it out of the cart. That can still create more pauses of, now how am I feeling now that it's not in my cart anymore? Mm-hmm. But this, I think, has been something, and I can't totally say when this fully solidified for me as a habit, but now that it's kind of just become part of my regular practices, I think it's a huge thing that has helped me in my finances. Maybe in our after show, I'll talk about how that can swing the other way. I realized this. I wanted to talk with you about it.
Okay, I can't wait to hear. For me, I think, so I have two things. So the first is, now that we're doing more home renovations, we're buying a lot more on Amazon. So before, the way I diverted myself was I just didn't go. I didn't have the app. I just stayed off, and I would play solitaire or something instead. But now I kind of have to be there. And so I have been kind of doing that, not a 30-day rule, but putting things in my cart and just leaving them there for a very long time to make sure that I still want them, to make sure I can't find them secondhand or for free on the Buy Nothing group. So that has been kind of my first one. And then the second, I think my most destructive spending behavior is definitely fast food. It's just been a habit since I became a mom, honestly, that I have picked up. I never did fast food before I had a child, and I was a vegetarian. So it was just not the only place I could really go was Taco Bell. And that's not fast food. That's fast Mexican. So it doesn't count. And so this is actually like my biggest struggle right now is actually this one. And it's the one that I'm really having trouble overcoming. So I am buying more snacks, like snack bars, because especially in pregnancy, like hunger will just come over me, but the will to make food does not come over me at the same time.
Yeah.
And so having like Kind bars or RX bars or like bars has been something that has been helpful for me. And I'll keep dried fruit in my glove compartment because that can stay in my hot car and not get gross. So yeah, that has been those tactics.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And here's the thing too, at least for you, Jen, for right now, again, I think life is lived in seasons, and I think recognizing what that means for you right now and giving some space for it, maybe even starting to put it into the budget for now, because not only are you a mom of a toddler, but you're pregnant. So I don't anticipate that what you're describing is going to last super long, but you're extra tired and you have extra demands on you and your body that okay, so like what if more convenience foods are necessary for the next 3 months? What could that mean for me? And how could I make decisions that feel like more healthy for me, but still allows room for convenience? Like I still think that there's space for this. Like we're not static, you know?
Right. And the bars are kind of my like compromise to be like, I really shouldn't be, going to McDonald's and Chick-fil-A as frequently as I am. I want to have more like nutritious foods, but I also don't expect myself to meal prep like I once did in my heyday. So
you did have a heyday.
Oh, girl. Yes, I did. And that day is over.
The golden years.
The sun has set on that day.
The sun might rise again when all of your children are like able to wipe themselves.
Oh gosh. Wow. What a dream. You put hope in my heart.
Oh, I'm so glad. I hope we put hope in all of your hearts today, and just at least motivation for curiosity about yourself and how the makeup of who you are impacts your spending and ways in which you can tailor your spending and your money decisions around that. Thank you so much for listening. And just a friendly reminder from the Frugal Friends that we got a Frugal Friends Club, which is like, I just love saying that. It's the word sale. Club. The word club is one of my favorite words. Yes. It's on sale. The sale is on. If you want to know what kind of success our members are having, here's one of our favorite wins we saw this past year. Comes from Wendy, who said, we saved $600. Thanks to last night's group and the challenge checklist, we do not have to buy a new dishwasher yet. My husband and I didn't know there was a filter to clean. LOL. Now to fix the dryer. Oh man, these simple things that we learn when we're in club and in community and in relationship with other people that we might not have realized before. And it saved Wendy $600. And who knows what it did for her dryer. Stay tuned or join the club and ask her.
You don't know the questions to ask until you get into community with other people who are asking those questions. And that's what we do in the Frugal Friends Club. So congrats, Wendy.
If you want to check out all of the courses, the interviews, the challenge, the groups, the club, head to Frugal Friends Club. Nope.
Oh, we should buy that URL.
Head to frugalfriendspodcast.com/club. Get in the club.
Until we buy that URL, we'll see you at the other one.
Bye.
Frugal Friends is produced by Eric Sirianni.
Okay, Jen, I realized this recently. It feels like this could potentially be a whole episode, but there might actually not be much more to say than what I'm about to say. But one of the Downsides of frugality for me, hot take, has been my now realization of the pressure to make wise decisions every single time with my money. I think, when I define frugality as being wise, good stewards of all of our resources, it's a beautiful definition and I love it and it serves me well. But what I've been realizing in myself is this underlying pressure to always be making the best decision. And it can sometimes be debilitating of, okay, I'm about to pull the trigger on this thing, but is that the best, most wise stewardship of this resource? Am I doing this in the best possible way? Could I have gotten the second hand if I had tried harder, done more? Could I have found a deal or a coupon? Could I have hacked this more? It's like, and that this might not be everyone's experience. I'm just realizing that, especially as you've mentioned, being in renovations, like I'm spending a lot of money right now, money I have set aside, money that is there to be spent on the particular things that I'm spending it on. But even in that, it's like, am I getting this vanity for the best? Am I getting the best possible vanity for the best possible deal so that I can be the best possible steward of this thing? Because I have a reputation.
I knew we were coming there. I knew we were going there. Yeah. Do you remember?
I mean, to myself too, not just my reputation to all my frugal friends, listeners, but like to myself. Like I don't want to lose this, but sometimes it can feel overwhelming. Sorry, what were you going to say?
Do you remember at the beginning of the episode when I said there's always room to care less?
Yes.
And you have a lot of room to go, Jill.
Okay.
You got a lot of room to stop caring. And I think it's like we hear all the time that our listeners and our frugal friends, that their favorite thing about us is the relatability. And we don't expect our listeners to make the best possible decision every time. And ultimately, what is best in the moment, time may tell that in the long run, it was actually not the best decision. So there is no way you are ever going to make the best decision unless you are like a psychic.
Like every single time. Yeah. It's just, I realize
there's no way.
It is the flip side of me, or the way that the pendulum can swing when I talk about that pause that I've created and how that has served me well. What can also come with that pause are all of those thoughts like, oh, well, could I have gotten, you name it. Like, could there have been a way that I could have gotten a better deal on this? Or is this actually the thing that I want to be purchasing? And so like, but yet if I did that every time and I researched to like the nth degree, all of these things, like movement and progress wouldn't be made either. Like there does come a point where, okay, you kind of try a few different things and it might not be exhausted, but you got to pull the trigger.
Yeah. Yeah. And give up the need to make the perfect decision.
Yeah.
Just give it up.
Well, I got to hold on to it.
Educated guesses.
Okay. Well, we'll see.
Educated guesses is all our decisions are.
Yeah.
You'll be okay.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Jen.
Discover the heartwarming and hilarious world of sibling connections on Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson. Dive into family tales, explore the human mind, and laugh with guests like Joel and Benji Madden. It's more than a podcast. It's a celebration of the ties that bind us.
And it's fun because we've decided to open it up to really like all kinds of different siblings. And it's going to be an awesome season.
Listen to Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Jacob Goldstein. I used to host Planet Money. Now I'm starting a new show. It's called What's Your Problem? Every week on What's Your Problem, entrepreneurs and engineers describe the future they're going to build once they solve a few problems. I'm talking to people trying to figure out how to do things that no one on the planet knows how to do, from creating a drone delivery business to building a car that can truly drive itself. Listen to What's Your Problem on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.